Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Echo Wirm Live. We're doing things a little different today. Usually we do these live streams every other Thursday. This week I did have something pop up on Thursday that I'm unable to do a live stream Thursday night, so hopefully this time still works for everybody. I figured it was early enough that our listeners over in Europe and the United Kingdom can still join in, and those in the United States may be getting toward the end of their workday or their school day or whatever, so we can still have this week as part of our just kind of Q&A, question and answer sort of thing that we do every other week. I know a lot of you guys enjoy these, or even if you can't make it to the live stream, that you guys watch these afterwards and get some of your own questions answered as well. So we got plenty of questions prepared on the channel to answer today. So let's get started with one that comes from Clay Nanke, who says, are you reading a chapter a day? So typically on the channel, we'll have 2 chapters come out every day. Right now, because we're kind of in the latter half of one book, we'll do 2 of that same book every day. We're trying to get through all of the Percy Jackson books before the release of the new Percy Jackson book, which comes out September 24th. So the goal right now is to get done with Mark of Athena on the main channel by the end of this week, and then we will start House of Hades on the channel on Saturday, and then after House of Hades we'll do Blood of Olympus, and then we'll do Chalice of the Gods, and then when we're done with Chalice of the Gods we'll be ready for Wrath of the Triple Goddess, which is the book that is coming out at the end of September. Rain in the chat says, why is your thumbnail Annabeth Chase, Percy Jackson, and Grover Thornbell? Good question. I haven't done a Percy Jackson thumbnail in a long time, and that's kind of the largest fan base that I have on the channel, so I figured I'd play into that this week. I know there's been talks about them starting to film Season 2, and so I figured we'd kind of play into that a little bit with the thumbnail. But yes, 2 chapters a day. Once we get done with Mark of Athena, then we'll do 1 chapter of House of Hades and 1 chapter of Voyage of the Dawn Treader, the 5th book in the Chronicles of Narnia series. And then once we're done with each, once we get through every chapter in each book, then I compile them into kind of a long-form version. That's what you see with like the part 1, part 2 sort of thing. Bobby Senpai says, I'm almost finished with The Last Olympian. When do I get to Mark of Athena? Good question. If you go in the descriptions of each like full-form video, it should say like single series order and then like extended series order. So Last Olympian, it should say something like 5 out of 7 single series, and then 5 out of however many, 17 or 18 for the extended series. So if you want to read the extended series, which is all of the Percy Jackson books, the House of Olympus, or Heroes of Olympus books, excuse me, and all of the side books, Trials of Apollo, that sort of thing, then go with the extended list. So after Last Olympian, you're going to want to read The Lost Hero. It's the first book in Heroes of Olympus. It's going to throw you off because Percy Jackson is not in that book, and there is a reason. He comes back in the follow-up book, Son of Neptune, and then after Son of Neptune, both casts of the first 2 books come together for Mark of Athena. So if you're on Last Olympian, Mark of Athena is going to be 3 books for you from now. Delaney says, I can't wait until you have House of Hades done. Me too. I am, let's see here. I have my books right next to me. I am currently on I'm through chapter 22, and I think there's 76 chapters in House of Hades. There's a lot shorter chapters and a lot more chapters in House of Hades. So I'm trying to do, at least for my patrons, I'm trying to do maybe 2 a day if I can get each chapter underneath 10 minutes. That way I'm not kind of shorting you guys on chapters. But there are 76 of them, so it's going to take a while to get through the entire book. Nabi says, finish The Last Olympian today. Well, perfect. If you want to start on The Lost Hero, then you're more than welcome to do so. Let's go to a question from Failure Master, who says, just curious, are you Canadian? I found it interesting the way you said Dias, Vag, and Voss were a bit different from mine. Yeah, so I say Dias instead of Deus, which is the common American pronunciation. My regional accent says Vag instead of Vag, because when I say Vag, it almost comes off as a kind of a slur, and I don't mean it to, and I don't want it to, so of course I say the long A sound of Vag. And then I say Voss. I also say Foyer. They're both the French pronunciations instead of the standard Americanized versions of Vase and Foyer. I'm not Canadian, but I did grow up near the Canadian border. I'm from the very, very north Midwest. And so I grew up, my stepdad grew up on both sides of the border, and so I'm I'm very familiar with the Canadian accent, which is why I have so much fun reading for Frank. Frank is a character from Vancouver. I'm a Vancouver sports fan, obviously. I have the Pacific FC towel behind me. I have my Canucks shirt on. And so I'm intimately familiar with the Vancouver accent, and I love doing it for Frank. I have a blast reading for Frank. Let's go to a question from Joe, who says, is it all right to ask for another signed book as a member of the book club? Yes. So for those of you that are unaware, my Patreon, everything is available to you over there for just $3. So if you go to patreon.com/echoworm, there should be a link in the description of this video. You guys can get advanced content up to like 3 weeks to a month in advance of the channel. I know we're already like halfway through Dune, and Dune won't hit the channel till August, so we're plenty in advance there. All of that is available to you for as little as $3. And then as the tiers go up, like $5, $10, $15, you get more and more perks. And once you get to the $25 or more perk, I send you a free book every month. And so if you want to join the Echo Worm Book Club, you can do so for $25 a month or more. I will send you a free book every month based on what we're reading on the channel. So for the month of June, I sent all of the book club members House of Hades so that you guys can read along with House of Hades. And a couple of you guys have been asking for signed versions, which I think is kind of interesting. I've never been asked to... I've never been asked to autograph things the way that I have in the last month. So I'm kind of having a blast with it, writing little notes to you guys. They're obviously not my books, so I feel a little odd signing someone else's work, although you guys are in love with the way that I interpret them, which I'm very thankful for. So if you guys do want signed versions, I'm more than happy to do so. At the moment, there isn't an extra cost to that beyond the $25 a month or more thing. If, for whatever reason, I have to like import the books to me and then ship them to you, and that outweighs that $25 cost, then I might consider moving it up to maybe $30, but I don't, at the moment, there aren't any... I'm not thinking of doing that anytime soon. Delaney says, speaking of that, I love how you say sorry in Frank's voice. Yes. The two that I get a blast out of with Frank is saying sorry and saying about. With my normal accent, it kind of shifts between the two. If I'm not careful, I end up saying sorry and out. But yeah, as an American, obviously the normal pronunciation is sorry and about. So I get a blast doing it. There's all these little words that I get to throw in there just... As a hockey fan, I have a blast doing it. So I'm glad you guys enjoy it too. Question from Easton Davies, who says, did you hear about the new Hunger Games book? I did. So for the life of me, is it The Morning on the Reaping? I can't remember what the title is. But Suzanne Collins, the author of the Hunger Games book, just announced a 5th Hunger Games book that is going to come out next spring. I think end of March is the current release date. And so my plan for that book is going to be the exact same as the rest of the Percy Jackson books. So as soon as they come out, I'm going to run to my local Barnes & Noble at like 9 in the morning. I'm going to take my entire day off, and I'm going to just read that book, not as fast as possible, but as efficiently as possible. So I'm hoping to have Wrath of the Triple Goddess to you guys within a few days of it coming out in bookstore. I almost said theaters. That's films. But the same case then for the new Hunger Games book. And by that time, we will be through all of the other Hunger Games books. Right now, the only Hunger Games book on the channel is Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is the other prequel. This new book is going to be another prequel. This one is about Haymitch, who is the kind of the trainer, mentor for Katniss and Peeta in the Hunger Games. This is the book that I personally and most Hunger Games fans have been wanting for as long as we've known the series. It's an extended Hunger Games. They call them the Quarter Quells, right? They happen every 25 years. And so with the Quarter Quell that Haymitch was a part of, the 50th Hunger Games, it takes place 24 years before the first Hunger Games book. There are double the amount of tributes. Thank you. And so we go from 24 tributes to 48 tributes. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in book form. Obviously, we know the outcome, but it'll be interesting, like the case with Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, to see how the story plays out. Connor S. says, are you excited for House of the Dragon Season 2? Team Black or Team Green? I personally am Team Black. I think, obviously, there's evil on both sides is kind of the thing people always say about Game of Thrones in particular, A Song of Ice and Fire, the Greater Universe. There's a lot of morally gray characters. I've always been accustomed to Team Black. That is also kind of the way that Fire and Blood is written from the perspective of Team Black. But there is an event that is going to happen in the first couple episodes that is going to make you consider supporting Team Green rather than Team Black, because it is very, very dark. So if you guys are firmly on Team Black, of course, this they call it Blood and Cheese. I'm not going to spoil anything, and please don't spoil anything in the chat, but the Blood and Cheese event is what kind of it makes people really reconsider where their loyalties lie. So I am very excited. That comes out, I think, this weekend, if I'm not mistaken, on Sunday night. Nintendo fan says, will you repost the old live streams? I think so. I am slowly working my way through my old video archives at the moment. I have a ton of old live streams that I might upload to the channel. I think I'm going to try to build up a little more. This is only the third live stream on this channel. I think once we get to about 5, then I'll start uploading the old ones, just so it's not weird. Rain says, "You dyed? Did you dye your hair, or are you naturally blonde?" I'm not naturally blonde. I have very dark blonde or very light brown hair naturally. So you can kind of see it. I have two-tone eyebrows, but the darks of my eyebrows is my natural hair color. Knox says, will you continue with the Percy Jackson books? Yeah, we're currently going through them. So right now we are on, the main channel is on Mark of Athena. That finishes up this weekend. Over on Patreon, we are on the House of Hades. We're about a quarter of the way through House of Hades. Once we're done with House of Hades, of course, then we'll do Blood of Olympus. After Blood of Olympus, then we'll do Chalice of the Gods in time for Wrath of the Triple Goddess to come out. What's Up, Bree says, Around the League is really cool. Oh, thank you for checking out my other channel. How many places have you been around? I've been to every Major League Baseball stadium. So of all the different leagues, the one that I've been to the most, game-wise or location-wise, is the MLB. I've been to every single stadium in Major League Baseball. I'm very, very privileged to do so. I have been to probably 10 of each of the National Football League stadiums and the National Hockey League stadiums. I've never been to a professional... that's not true. I've been to a single professional basketball game. So I haven't been to a ton of basketball arenas that aren't also hockey arenas. And then I've never been to a Premier League game. So I'm excited to do so. My wife and I are going to England in August, and I'm excited to take part in that. So... that means a lot to me. Thank you for checking out the other channel. If you guys are unaware, I have a second channel called Sheetg, S-H-E-E-T space G, where I do a lot of long-form content, a lot of my more personal videos where I talk about my opinions on stuff, such as Doctor Who, Game of Thrones, Avatar The Last Airbender. If that's something that you're interested in, go check that out. But over there, I also have some sports content, and one of the series that I do is called Around the League, where I basically tour around different leagues or conferences or whatever you want to talk about, and go through the different stadiums or the different campuses. So, Delaney asked, do you have a second channel? Yes, that's called Sheetg, S-H-E-E-T space G. The logo is pretty much identical to this one, but it's green instead of yellow. Nabi says, I know you're already reading a lot of books, but have you considered reading the Shadowhunter books? Sorry if it's too much to ask or for you to read. No, no, it's not too much to ask for. Yes, you're not the first person to ask about the Shadowhunter books. I have added them to my list, and I am intending on reading them. I just don't know entirely when I'll get to them. But yes, I am aware of them. They are on my list. Let's go to a question from... DY5, who says, can you make your Harry Potter content free? It is free. It's just not available on YouTube. There was a copyright issue with Harry Potter's lawyers, and so we moved all of our content off of YouTube. It's available for free on Patreon. You don't have to pay for a membership on Patreon to get the Harry Potter content, and you can also find it over on Vimeo.com. Both links to those are available in the description below this video. Vimeo.com or Patreon.com. You can find it for free there. Kyle Kozama says, start Son of Neptune today, hearing it while working. Thank you, man. Your channel is a blessing. Well, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. I love hearing the way that you guys relate to this content through my work. It means a lot to me. Nintendo fan says, how come this is on a Tuesday? I can't do Thursday, so I figured I'd rather do one on a different day than cancel it altogether. Let's go to a question from Rick Hedman, who says, where is part 2 of Mark of Athena? Good question. So part 2 of Mark of Athena is currently available over on Patreon. It comes out this, I think, Saturday, the 15th, which I believe is Saturday. So that will be available to everybody on Saturday. Patreon is in advance of the channel about 2 to 3 weeks. So if you guys want advanced content, feel free to do so. It's as little as $3 a month. That's all you have to pay to get access to all of the advanced content. Everything that is over on Patreon will eventually be over on the channel, or at least be available for free on Patreon eventually. But right now, that $3 buffer zone is kind of that helps me support what I do, but also kind of allows me to have a buffer from the channel, so I can feel pressure from my patrons, but not feel pressure to put anything on the channel, because there is enough of that kind of week break there. Question from... Oh, same thing. Canoe says, I see part 2 is up for members, but I can't find a way to subscribe or become a member. Yeah, YouTube took away or suspended memberships for the channel at the moment. The channel is currently unmonetized for reasons that I have no idea. I sent in an appeal and they rejected the appeal. So we'll try again. August 4th, I think, is the date that we can try for reappeal. Our old channel was monetized, so I'm not really sure why they don't believe that this content can be monetized, because we were over there. But at the moment, the only way to get advanced content is over on patreon.com. $3 a month. Delaney says, do you have House of Hades on YouTube? I don't, not yet. It will start the 16th, so Sunday, I believe the first chapter of House of Hades will come out. Let's see here. Strider Hellsrider says, how come you're allowed to read Percy content but not Lord of the Rings? So it all depends on... It's a per author deal, right? So some authors are very okay. It's kind of like studios with TV shows. If you guys follow YouTubers who make content on certain subjects, if they make content on BBC properties, they're very commonly subject to copyright strikes. Whereas other studios, Disney is a little less strict, and authors are the same way with their content. So Rick Riordan has historically been very kind to channels like mine, or channels who make content based around his works, whereas J.K. Rowling, obviously that's the reason we don't have Harry Potter content on here. And same with J.R.R. Tolkien. Tolkien's obviously dead. Several of his children are dead. Some are still alive, and some of them have sold their rights to other studios. So Amazon owns a large majority of Lord of the Rings content, and because of the state of his content and the different copyright bounds between the different parties that own the rights, it is kind of a mess copyright-wise on YouTube. And so that's not something I want to risk the channel for, because if we can keep all the Percy Jackson stuff here, I don't want to risk all of that in favor of something else. So I'm going to put it, once we do Lord of the Rings, I'm going to put it over on Vimeo or on Patreon. What's Up Bree says, is there an active conversation about the radiation effect in Discord? I want to talk about it, but don't want to spoil it for others. I'm not on Discord often. I just heard chapter 10 yesterday. At the moment, there's not a specific channel for it, but you are welcome to talk spoilers in it's called I think it's, let me look it up here. There is a channel for it at the moment. I'm working with my Discord manager on making a specific radiation effect spoiler channel. But there is one called Personally Made Stories, where everyone who is kind of a writer in the Discord can talk about their stories, and that's where we've been talking about the radiation effect. So if you have questions that you want asked or that I'm comfortable answering, you're more than welcome to ask them here, but feel free to go over to Discord and ask those in the Personally Made Stories section. If you do, like, before your message, if you write /spoiler, it usually hides it for people who don't want to look at spoilers. Question from Henry Davis, who talking about the part of Mark of Athena where I made the seahorse noise. How did you make that noise, and why is it so funny? Good question. So in the book, if you guys are unfamiliar, I can't remember which chapter it is. It's a Leo chapter. They're underwater, and they are basically taken to a mermaid camp, or a merman camp. And the guy pronounces it. And in the book it says, like, unintelligible horse noises or something. And I decided to actually make that noise. And so I have no idea what it sounded like. I just did it in the moment. I do this a lot, actually. If there's, like, a place where I can put in a little, like, vocal Easter egg, or anyone else who would copy my content and post it, everyone would know that it's me, kind of thing. And so I do that quite a bit. Sometimes I'll make references to Echo Worm Audiobooks. I also did that in Mark of Athena. Narcissus has a YouTube channel where I specifically say that he's subscribed to Echo Worm Audiobooks. And so I do that basically just as a watermark for my content. There's a couple good ones. If you're a wrestling fan, I have some good ones coming for you in Chalice of the Gods once that comes out. I've already recorded Chalice of the Gods. I'm just waiting to release it once we're done with Heroes of Olympus. Naya says, what are other platforms you use to post? Everything goes up on Patreon first. So patreon.com/EchoWorm. And then I also post over on Vimeo.com. You can look up Echo Worm. Otherwise, there's a link below in the description here. So that's where all of our other content is, not other content, but that's where it is located outside of YouTube. Question from Leah Nunez, who's asking about the Narcissus part. Did you add that funny part about being subscribed to you? That was amazing. Yes. Yeah, I do it quite a bit and have a blast with it. Just, it's obviously not what's in the text. The text doesn't have anything there. I'd be amazed if it did. But no, I just, like I said, I do that for a sort of watermark. With the old channel, we got, every once in a while, people would just download our videos and then re-upload them as their own content. And so I wanted to find a way to kind of stop that. And so what I did was just start to put little Easter eggs in there for you guys to find. That way you'd know this is my channel. Or if someone was listening to it on another channel and they heard subscribe to Echo Worm Audiobooks, they'd be like, well, this is different. So anyways, that's the backstory to that. Let's go to a question from Sarcastic King Dude, who says, can you please do Trials of Apollo, Percy Jackson and the Greek Heroes, and Percy Jackson and the Greek Gods? Yes. So right now, my current schedule for Rick Riordan properties. So that's going to be all of his properties, not just Percy Jackson. Obviously, we have the first 5 Percy Jackson books on the channel. We are almost done with Mark of Athena on the channel. Then we'll do the final 2 books of Heroes of Olympus. Once we get done with Blood of Olympus, then we'll do Chalice of the Gods. And then Wrath of the Triple Goddess comes out at the end of September. After Wrath of the Triple Goddess, then I'm going to take a little break from Greek mythology content and do the 3 books in the Kane Chronicles. That is the Egyptian, Rick Riordan's mythology books on Egyptian mythology. I'll do those, probably do the Percy Jackson Kane Chronicles spin-off novellas. There's like 3 or 4 of them. Then we'll come back, we'll do Trials of Apollo, Sun and the Star, that sort of thing, and then we'll finish by doing Magnus Chase. And somewhere in there, I'll probably do Percy Jackson and the Greek Gods, or Percy Jackson's Greek Heroes, I think is the title of it. I just bought it. I've never read it before. But it's basically, it's a mythology textbook, essentially, that is written in the same style as Percy Jackson, if that makes any sense. Brindley says, what is the timestamp when Percy and Annabeth fall asleep in the stables? So this is a very hot topic event that happens in Mark of Athena, has been talked about by the fandom since it came out. It's not explicitly stated, but heavily implied that something happened in the stables. It's more so implied in the follow-up chapter, in chapter 14, where they get punished for falling asleep together in the stables. But it happens basically toward the end of chapter 13 of Mark of Athena. So I don't know the exact timestamp, but if you go to chapter 13 or if you go to chapter 14 and work your way backwards about 5 minutes or so, that is where that happens. Naya says, thanks. By the way, your audiobooks are the best. Thank you very much. I started to read with them, and I still do. Well, thank you very much. I really do appreciate hearing feedback like that from you guys, and just how you've connected, like I said, with these stories through my work. It's very impactful to me. So, Zaran Angel says, do you know which house Lady Jessica is from? Yes. I'm not going to spoil it, but yes, I have read the book. It happens pretty early on. They spoil it. I think it's in the first act of Dune. Dune is split into 3 acts, or 3 books, essentially. Same with Hunger Games. But the reveal of who Lady Jessica, like which house she belongs to, is in the first part. It was treated in the films like a major spoiler. It's not that big of a spoiler in the books necessarily. But yes, I am aware of it. I have read the book. YBHX says, how do you prepare? Do you read the whole chapter for yourself and then record yourself? Or no. Typically, I read everything cold, which has its advantages and disadvantages, especially if you don't know character origins. And you, like, I love to do the accents. And so if I find that a character has an accent that I wasn't using previously, then I'll stop and go back to where that character started speaking. Typically, it saves me time, is the big thing. And I'm pretty confident in my speaking voice for the most part. You can tell there's a lot of mistakes in my earlier work. I recorded the earliest Harry Potter and Percy Jackson books 2 years ago. And so my style of narration, or at least my confidence in narrating, is significantly different. It has significantly improved since then. I do talk a lot faster, which is kind of a downside, but I do tend to read everything cold. And so in a 45-minute chapter or so, there's probably 6 or so spots where I'll have to stop, take about a 30-second break, go back at a paragraph, and then restart, and then I'll crop everything in post. So yeah, I do typically read everything cold, which most of these books I've read before, several years ago, but some of them I am actually coming in having never read them before. Travis Frost says, are you going to do Trials of Apollo after this series is finished? Yes, but I'm going to do Kane Chronicles first. So I just mentioned kind of my outline for Rick Riordan's works going forward on the channel. Mia says, poor Annabeth, can this quest get any worse? Yes, it can. The end of Mark of Athena is significantly worse than the spot you're at right now. I do promise you, it gets a lot worse for Annabeth. Yeah, I'm not going to spoil anything. There's a major spoiler coming this weekend. Mark of Athena has famously the heaviest cliffhanger in the entire series, except for maybe one event that's not an entire cliffhanger. It's just like the biggest tragic event in the entire series. Please don't spoil it in the chat, but there's something that happens in Trials of Apollo that is significantly worse than what happens at the end of Mark of Athena. But yeah, Mark of Athena has a huge cliffhanger coming up for you. Ellington Love says, I want to say thank you for your audiobooks for Percy Jackson. My ADHD doesn't let me read books as much as I want, and listening to your audiobooks helps me get through work. Well, thank you. That's the goal of this channel, is to allow people who don't necessarily have the means to read them, whether it be ADHD, dyslexia, or the one I often hear is visual impairments. People who physically can't read, who are unable to do so, are able to experience these stories that I love so much through my work as a narrator. And I, copyright issues aside, I think there are issues with how much Audible is making people pay for books. I think it's immoral, personally, and so if I can get away with doing it for free, I will. And so obviously we can't do it with Harry Potter here, but we've moved it over to Patreon, and I think that is, specifically with Percy Jackson, I think that's what the author wants. I think he wants as many people to engage with these stories as possible. Obviously, he wants to make money from them, but his whole purpose in writing these was to make people experience Greek mythology in a new way. And so if you guys can experience that through me because you can't experience it through the physical medium, then I'm very thankful, and very grateful to do it on your behalf. Zana says, I am really enjoying the Narnia books. Do you plan on doing all 7 books? Yes. Currently, the first 4 are available on the channel. The 5th one is available over on Patreon. It will start on the channel. The first chapter of Voyage of the Dawn Treader will be coming to the channel on Saturday, the 15th. And then after we do that, then we'll do Dune. And then after we do Dune, then we'll do Silver Chair. After Silver Chair, we'll do Hunger Games. And after Hunger Games, then we'll finish Narnia with The Last Battle. So that's kind of the upcoming schedule for non-Rick Riordan books. So for those of you who are new to the channel, 1 o'clock a.m. is typically when a non-Percy Jackson book airs, and then 11 o'clock Eastern time in the morning is typically when a Percy Jackson chapter airs. At the moment, because we are at the end of it, I decided to give you 2 at once. So that's what's going on. Joseph Morrill says, a lot of nonsense happens in Trials of Apollo. Don't tell work I'm on my phone to catch this live stream. I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you very much for being here. I won't tell your work, I promise. Let's go to a question from... You guys are more than welcome to ask questions in the chat as well. I know a lot of you have already been doing that, but if you guys want questions answered, I'm more than happy to read them out of the chat. Let's go to one from Acid Thomas, who says, why is Chapter 1 of House of Hades members only? So what I do typically is, like I said, 2 chapters a day. There's a buffer zone, so it's in advance of the channel for patrons. That's how I kind of support my work. I'm never going to give them content that you guys aren't going to get on the channel, but it allows me a little time to space that out. And so House of Hades, we're currently through the first 22... I'm through the first 22 chapters. I think there's 20 available over on Patreon, with 21 and 22 coming out tomorrow morning. But those, after we are done with all of the chapters in Mark of Athena, then we'll start on House of Hades. So Chapter 1 of House of Hades should be coming to you this weekend after we finish Mark of Athena, if that makes any sense. question from Funnycast, who says, "Hi, I listen on Patreon, and the second part of this book is still private, even though it's public on YouTube. Would you mind making it public on Patreon?" Interesting. I've never been asked to make things public on Patreon if they're available on YouTube. If that's where you get your content, then yeah, I'll be happy to do so. That's the first time I've heard that request. Typically, people just listen on YouTube. But yeah, if you're a patron only or a Patreon only listener, even for free, and there's content over there that you want that is available for free on the channel, but not available on Patreon, let me know what that is, and I'll make it public for you. I'd be happy to do so. I just forget which content that is. From my perspective, it's not that easy to see which ones are public and which ones are private. Most of them are just private because they're available publicly over on YouTube. So just let me know if there's something you want to see that's currently not available to you over there. YBHX says, "Do you make any money off of it? Because it must be so time consuming." It is time consuming. This isn't my main job. I have a full-time job outside of this. I also have a part-time job, and I'm also a father and a husband. So this is kind of my fifth job. I do make money over on Patreon. We have like 1,400 members on Patreon, which I'm beyond grateful for. So I just want to give a huge shout out to my patrons at the moment. This needs to be updated. It always needs to be updated. But a shout out to my current upper level patrons. John Buck, Donald Easter, Dalton Bailey, Joseph Morrill, Charles Jacobson, Lydia Bryant, Zhukov Crawford, Riley Lang, Cameron Stevens, Hessa Al-Habashi, Brandon Doty, Bella Joy a second time, Victoria Libretto, Rania, Rock and Ryan 99, and there was one that I forgot to add to the list before this live stream started that I wanted to give a quick shout out to. Give me 1 sec to find it. That person's name is give me a sec. Katie McGrath. Thank you very much, Katie. I forgot to add you to this specific page. But I do recognize you, and I promise I will have it updated the next time I'm here. So thank you all for supporting me over there. I currently am not monetized on YouTube. Like I said, that is an issue. Their reasoning was that this is stolen content, and I believe the reason that they believe this is stolen content is because other users have posted my videos elsewhere, which is frustrating. I made an appeal, and they rejected that appeal, so we'll try again in August to try to get the channel monetized. But at the moment, no, the only money I'm making off of this is over on Patreon. So if you want to support me over there, if you want to get advanced content, it's as little as $3 a month for everything in advance of the channel. And then if you guys do want to join that the book club, it's $25 a month or more. Joseph Morrill says, "I still find it major creepy when you put Easter eggs in the newer chapters of House of Hades. As a patron supporter, I've had some nightmares due to one of the Easter eggs." Yeah, so I did 2 back-to-back, chapters 13 and 14 of House of Hades. 13, I said something along the lines of subscribe to Echo Wirm Audiobooks so my family doesn't starve. And then chapter 14, I followed that up by saying that their deaths are now on your hands if you don't subscribe. But I forgot to add the context of if you don't subscribe, and so I think people were a little confused by what the chapter 14 one meant. But chapter 14 is just a follow-up of chapter 13. Anyways, those are 2 Easter eggs that are coming to you. Joseph Morrill says, "Actual question, why pronounce it as Voldemort and not Voldemort? Is the T silent and Warner Brothers is dumb?" Not necessarily. So this was an issue that didn't come out until after the films were done. So J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, never clarified with the filmmakers how she wanted Voldemort's name to be pronounced. She's a francophone, someone who speaks French. She's obviously English, but she is bilingual in English and French. In French, if you guys speak French or know anything about French, typically a T at the end of a word, whether it be preceded by an E or an R, that T will be silent, and it will change kind of the last syllable of that word. Voldemort's name translates roughly in French to flight from death, Voldemort. Mort, or that's where we get the Latin root mortality, mortuary, means death. In French, there is no pronunciation on the T. And so she never clarified that with the filmmakers. And so obviously we went through an entire 8-film franchise where they did pronounce the T. I typically pronounce things the way that the authors pronounce them. And so I, in my recordings, pronounced it without the T. So I say Voldemort. Another example of this is with Dune. In the new film, they pronounce Paul's concubine's name as Chani. That's Zendaya's character. They pronounce it Chani in the new film. In the original film and in the book, Frank Herbert says Chaney. And so I am pronouncing it Chaney in my readings. The only place that I don't typically do the author's pronunciations is with George R. R. Martin, and that's because George R. R. Martin has no idea how words are supposed to be pronounced. He even though he wrote them, he didn't spell them very accurately, and so it's very confusing. And so George R. R. Martin is the only exception to that. He says Dothraki instead of Dothraki, even though he doesn't spell it with an A, he spells it just a single I. Anyways, but yes, so I typically do the author's pronunciations in the case of J.K. Rowling and Frank Herbert. Delaney says, I tried to read Trials of Apollo, but I couldn't finish it because something happened and I was emotionally crushed. Maybe I will finish the series when you come out with them. Yeah, we'll see. In the series, relative, because it's a 5-book series, the event that we're talking about happens very early on. It happens in the 3rd one. And so there's still an entire half of the series left after the big event happens. And part of why I don't want to read The Sun and the Star before we read Trials of Apollo is because that event is referenced several times in The Sun and the Star. And so I don't want to spoil that event for you guys by giving you Sun and the Star, even though you guys have been requesting Sun and the Star significantly more than the Trials of Apollo series. YBHX says, is your pronunciation of vaguely regional? I had never heard it pronounced that way before. Yes, I'm from the northern Midwest. We say vag instead of vag. It's also the common pronunciation in the United Kingdom and Australia to say vag. Same with Canada. They typically say vag, whereas on the west and east coast, you'll often hear vag, especially in the south too, you'll hear vag. But because of my accent, like I mentioned earlier in the stream, when I say it with a short A, it almost sounds like I'm saying another word that I really don't want to be caught saying on camera. And so I often do the long form of my regional accent. So yes, I say vaguely instead of vaguely. What's up, Reese says, have you read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle? No, but you are not the first person to request that. It is on my list. I've never read it, but it is on the list. I'm aware of it. Joseph Morrell says, it's so weird for that thing to happen in the 3rd book instead of like the 4th book. Yeah, I completely agree. Part of why I have a habit of enjoying the penultimate book or the second to last book in any series, like Battle of the Labyrinth is my favorite Percy Jackson book, Half-Blood Prince is my favorite Harry Potter book. Part of why I enjoy them so much is because the rising actions really hit their peak before the last book, like right before it. And so the fact that it's not necessarily the rising action, but the big thing in Trials of Apollo that everyone talks about happens midway through the series. And so it's kind of this weird progression, but it makes a lot of sense because the characters are able to process what happens and process the grief that they have going into the final couple books there. It's very well done. It's very well written. It's just weird where it's placed. Let's go to a question from Mia, who says, why was this chapter so short? You will notice that going forward with Rick Riordan's chapters, especially in House of Hades. This book is not too much longer than Mark of Athena. Less than 100 pages more than Mark of Athena. Mark of Athena has 52 chapters. House of Hades has 76. So you guys are going to see a significant shrinkage of the chapter lengths in House of Hades. I will try to give you guys as much in advance as I can, but I still want, I don't want the channel to catch up with Patreon too close, because I still want my patrons to get that advanced content. And so even when we're doing 2 a day on the channel, I still want my members over on Patreon to get kind of that advanced content. But the chapters are going to be a lot shorter going forward. I think there's one at the end of Mark of Athena that's like 3 minutes long. So yeah, you'll notice that. They're going to get a lot shorter, which sucks, but I didn't write the book, so I'm going to blame it on the author. Ray Takes the World says, why don't you edit out the mess-ups? Good question. Part of it is timing-based. Like I mentioned, this isn't my main job, and so there's only a specific amount of time that I can give toward the channel, especially with the editing side of things. I record 3 to 4 hours a day, and I don't have a ton of time to edit over the top of that. So some of my earlier recordings, like my early Percy Jackson recordings or my early Harry Potter recordings, I left all my mistakes in. Nowadays, I will leave them in unless it's a major stumble, and so you'll see significantly less nowadays that I am editing more. But that being said, it does add an air of authenticity to my readings, and part of the vibe, I guess you could say, that I want to give off with this channel is a friend or an older brother or even a dad just reading to you. is what I want this to feel like for you guys. I created this channel for that purpose, to, if something were to ever happen to me, that my son could still have that with me. If I were to die for whatever reason, or if I weren't able to be with my son, maybe he goes off to college or whatever, or he's off on vacation and he wants dad to read to him. That's what this is for. And so it adds that air of authenticity. And plus, some of the mistakes are really iconic. So speaking of, if you guys want, I have an I Ate the Kitchen Table shirt available for you guys. It's available as a premium t-shirt, long sleeve tee, pullover hoodie, and crew neck sweatshirts. Anywhere between $19.99 and I think the most expensive one is $29.99. There's a link to that in the description below. If you click on the link that says merch, it's like a bonfire link. But yes, that is my most famous mistake. It says I ate the kitchen table. I can't remember which chapter it's in, but it's in Sea of Monsters. It's my most commented mistake that I've ever made. So if you guys are interested in that, feel free to support the channel that way. Joseph Morrill says, as a House of Hades fan, it's so wild that the chapters are so much shorter. We need that Percy Beth to be much longer, please, Rick. I beg you. There are some good moments in Chalice of the Gods. I did finish recording Chalice of the Gods. It's not out yet anywhere, except for my patrons if they ask me a very specific question. It's kind of hidden content at the moment. But that'll be coming out as soon as we're done with Blood of Olympus on both Patreon and YouTube. But there's a lot more that is going forward with Percy and Annabeth, whether it be through Chalice of the Gods or Wrath of the Triple Goddess. Yeah, they're... I don't like the short chapters. I completely agree with you. But as a narrator, it helps. It does. It helps me, my attention span, stay in the moment a little better. Question from R. Lakami, who says, what were you laughing at when the parental advisory bit was on? This is underneath my Diary of a Wimpy Kid reading. Yeah, so I mentioned this last live stream. One of the most fun experiences I've ever had reading a book narrating a book was when I did Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And the reason I had so much fun with it is because I read that book with my brother and my dad when I was like a third or fourth grader. And part of why I was having so much fun with it is just remembering how much we laughed at some of the jokes in there. And so I think the part that you're referring to when Roderick, or when Greg goes downstairs and finds Roderick's heavy metal CD, part of why I was laughing is I was trying to imagine me in my own basement doing exactly that, where I turn on the stereo at full blast, thinking I have headphones on and it not working. And I was trying to imagine how pissed my wife would be if I woke her up and I woke our son up. And I think just that's what I was laughing at as I was reading that. And I decided to keep it in just for personal reasons, because it reminds me of how much fun I had reading with my dad back in the day. So... What's Up Bree says, I actually think I requested it. Not pushing to read it, just think it's a good read. Your request list is too much. It is long, but I promise I will get to as many of them as I can when I get to them. Obviously, you see the stack of books behind me. There's a long ways to go, but we'll get through it. I honestly never thought we'd get this far in Percy Jackson, and we're already halfway through the series, so... Let's go to a question from Sven Carlson, who says, what do you think of the new season of Doctor Who? Good question. I love it, genuinely. It is one of my favorite series of Doctor Who that I've ever watched. It's probably the best viewing experience I've ever had as a Doctor Who fan. There's a couple episodes that I didn't like as much. I was not as big a fan as many people were the last week or two. I will put my opinions out on my other channel. I have all of the Doctor Who episodes ranked over there, if you guys want to check out my opinions over there. I do really like it, though. There are some episodes that I think are among the best in Doctor Who's entire history, and I think just the consistency of this season has been very good. I wish it were longer. We only have 2 weeks left, and I'm a little disappointed by that. But I think it's been very strong, and I very much enjoyed it so far. Taryn Reese says, your comparison between Sally Jackson and Nina from Sesame Street is uncanny. Yeah, so I have a 1-year-old son, and I watch way too much Sesame Street. And I think I mentioned this on a live stream. I don't know if it's one of the ones that's currently on the channel or not. But I mentioned that Nina, who's one of the human characters on Sesame Street, kind of looks like Sally Jackson, if you're not thinking too hard about it. It's just kind of a passing resemblance. The two actresses, I think it's Virginia Call plays Sally Jackson in the new show, and Suki Lopez is the one from Sesame Street. And if you're not thinking too hard about it, they do look very similar. I'm glad someone else agrees with me on that. I was just watching Sesame Street one day with my son, and I went, she kind of looks like Percy's mom. So anyways, I'm glad you enjoyed that. Let's go to a question from Gus Pram, who says, any plans to read Avatar The Last Airbender books? Yes. Behind me at the moment, which way do I got to move here? Got to drop the shoulder. Right above my shoulder here, you can't really see it, that is The Rise of Kyoshi. So there are 4 of the FCE novels currently out. 2 of them have to do with Kyoshi, 2 of them have to do with Avatar Yang Chen. So that's Avatar The Last Airbender, if you guys are familiar with that show. These are books about previous avatars. So Avatar Aang is the main character in the normal show. Korra is his successor, and then he has some predecessors going back a couple years. One of them is Avatar Kyoshi, and one of them is Avatar Yang Chen, and they both have a series of novels about them by an author that, yes, I do intend to read eventually. I don't know when exactly I'll get to it, but it is on my immediate read pile behind me. Joseph Morrow says, give me a short synopsis of the radiation effect to convince me to read it or listen to it. This is from the playlist itself. So let me find it here. Radiation effect by... Oh, I wrote it. That's right. Let's see here. Set in the fictional town of Tylersville, Wyoming, The Radiation Effect tells the story of 6 high school freshmen who, like thousands of others around the world, have developed individualized radiation effects as a result of generational anomalies stemming back to the atomic age. These students and their effects are kept under close watch by the IREA, a private military company responsible for said effects. Forced into service before their effects disappear in their early 20s, the 6 main characters wrestle with the responsibilities of life and death missions, as well as the day-to-day experience of teenage life. When a mission goes awry for the group and deep political secrets are unearthed, each must come face-to-face with an important test of their loyalties, and whether they choose to prioritize friends, family, or country. Genres: political, action, thriller, drama, romance. Age range: 16+. Content warning: situational violence, graphic violence, and terror. So, The Radiation Effect is a book I am currently writing, actively writing. And when I finish a chapter, I record it, and I will put it over on the channel for you guys to listen to. So, the main story is there's 6 kids who, back after World War II, the United States did some secret testing just to see what they could get away with in radiation testing and that sort of thing. And it's kind of the typical, you expose someone to enough radiation, they become a superhero. Not quite. It's basically if you can think of the concept of light fantasy and high fantasy, where light fantasy takes place in a fantasy world, but the magic is less significant to the overall meaning of the story. Something like the early Game of Thrones books are like that in comparison to how they get later on. That's kind of where this magic system exists. It plays a significant part in the characters' lives, but it's not an over-the-top superhero story necessarily. So, yes, the characters have kind of these X-Men-like powers, but the story is based around what happens surrounding them and surrounding the company that they are forced to work for. And so it's more a political drama than anything. And the characters are all in high school, and so it has to do it's got kind of a teenage angsty romance element to it. Little more mature. It's definitely not something that would fit necessarily the exact audience of Percy Jackson. It's going to be a little more mature. But that being said, I'm very proud of it. So if you guys are interested in reading that, you are more than welcome to do so. That is called The Radiation Effect. You can find it on the channel. First 10 chapters are available. 11th chapter is available over on Patreon. Let's see here. Gray123 Juck12 says, sorry if this is a repeat, I just came, but can you do Percy Jackson book 6? Yes, we're going to do it after, so we're going in series order, right? So we still have 2 books left before Chalice of the Gods. So we're finishing up Mark of Athena, and then we'll do House of Hades, Blood of Olympus, and then Chalice of the Gods should drop on the channel sometime late August, early September, in time for the 7th book to come out. I believe it comes out September 24th. So yes, it is on the schedule. It is done. It is recorded. It is edited. It is not out yet. except for my patrons. If they ask me a specific question, it's not available on Patreon. But I do have a perk for my patrons. I have downloadable content available for my patrons, and if you go to the downloadable folders that I share with you, if you've asked for those, then you should be able to find Chalice of the Gods there if you really want to listen to it. Dorian Chapman says, when is the last Spiderwick book hitting the channel? Good question. I have to record it first, but my intention is to have it on the channel before the end of the month. We've done the first 4 books in the Spiderwick Chronicles. The 5th book should be coming out, like I said, at the before the end of the month. I really enjoy the Spiderwick Chronicles. They're more mature than I remember them being, and I enjoy this read-through of them. I read them back when the movie came out, back in 2008, and I don't think I was old enough to understand how well written they are. They're very short, but the story is very full, if that makes any sense. The artwork is fantastic, and yeah, the Spiderwick Chronicle, great series. And I believe there's a show coming up, or there were intentions for a show to come out. Let me do some Google searching just to see when that show is supposed to air. I thought it was happening this spring, but I haven't really heard anything. Spiderwick Chronicles TV series. Yeah, it is out. I haven't watched it yet. It does not have a very high Rotten Tomato score, which is not promising. The movie's single movie. They made a single movie out of all 5 books. It was all right. It was Freddie Highmore. I love Freddie Highmore. Came out in 2008, but yeah, there's a new TV series available on, I think Roku has their own channel now. And this was kind of their flagship, and yeah, I guess the ratings are not very good for it. I haven't seen it yet, but the books are fantastic. Let's go to a couple questions from my members of my Discord server. Osamu Dazi says, how can you read Percy Jackson without giggling every 3 seconds? Good question. I don't know. It's probably where my focus is. Like there are some events in the books where if I'm in the right mood, they're really funny, even when I'm reading them. But most of the time, like when I'm narrating, my focus is so much in the story and how my performance is going to affect the moment than it is actually in the moment, if that makes any sense. And so, yes, sometimes the comedy is really, really funny. But most of the time I can see through it to try to give you guys the best of that comedy, if that makes any sense. It's like a, how would I describe it? If a comedian... It's like a comedian not laughing at their own jokes, if that makes any sense. Now, I didn't write these, but it's like I lose myself in the performance of it, whereas I want you guys to be the ones to laugh at it, so I don't have to. If that makes any sense. I don't quite know how to describe it better than that. Good question, though. Other question, what is the best book not in a series that you've read on the channel? Good question. So technically, A Song of Ice and Fire isn't out in any full form on the channel. So I'm going to kind of cheat with this answer and say Storm of Swords, which is the 3rd book in the Game of Thrones series, or A Song of Ice and Fire. Storm of Swords is my favorite book, probably ever. Very good book. Was turned into seasons 3 and 4 of Game of Thrones. I would like to read it eventually on the channel. It's just I have to get through a lot of other material to get there. So that's going to be my cop-out answer there. Question from... Andrea, who says, do you have a time frame for the last 2 Narnia books? Yes. So Voyage, yes. So the 5th one is going up on the channel for non-members or non-patrons starting this week. And the final 2 will be over on Patreon probably by the end of this month. We'll start on the Silver Chair. I started recording it, but it's not going to go live. We're going to get through Dune first. I think we have like 30 more chapters of Dune. And so probably middle of July is when Silver Chair will start appearing over on Patreon. Once we get done with Silver Chair, then we'll do Hunger Games, and then once we're done with the first Hunger Games book, then we'll do the Last Battle. Question from Jake Rubalcava, who says, I know you're backed up with requests, but if someone were to request a book, are there any requirements or restrictions? No, not specifically. I think each one is probably a case-to-case basis. There are a couple authors that I'm hesitant to read on the channel for either content purposes or just the whole purpose of my channel is for you guys to be comfortable reading the stuff that I have on the channel, if that makes any sense. And so if there's stuff that I think doesn't add to the audience that we have here, or stuff that you guys have requested, then I probably won't do that. Like, there are some authors that are just provocative to be provocative, and probably not always going to read those authors. I mean, so one example, content-wise, is going to be Stephen King. I'm never going to read It on the channel, and for those of you that have read It, there's a very clear reason why. I don't think scenes like that add to the overall narrative, whereas similar scenes happen in Game of Thrones, but they affect the overall character narratives. It's give or take, and I also happen to like Game of Thrones a lot more than I like It. But that being said, I will read something like The Shining from Stephen King, or something like The Stand, or the Kennedy one that has been requested several times. So it's a case-to-case basis. I wouldn't say I will directly turn down anything off the top of my head that you guys will request, but please don't be offended if there's something that I personally am uncomfortable reading. Gray123 Juck 12 says, "Are you planning to do all the Percy Jackson books?" Yes, I think I've said that a few times now on this stream. We've done the first 5. We're going to get through Heroes of Olympus, and then we'll do books 6 and 7. We'll wait till 8 comes out next fall. Obviously, you can't read a book that's not out yet. But then we'll do Trials of Apollo and all of the other side books as well. Question from Blackheart Dove, who says, "What is your favorite book or series that you've read so far on the channel? Who's your favorite character in that book?" Good question. I would say the 3 most entertaining reads that I've had on this channel, for me personally, were probably Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Because for me as a narrator, I think that's when I really started to figure it out. Like, I was comfortable in what I was doing. I liked doing the accents that I was doing. I really kind of fell in love with the narrating thing once we got to Goblet of Fire. My favorite character from that book is Moody, or Fake Moody. I really enjoyed Diary of a Wimpy Kid. My favorite character in Diary of a Wimpy Kid is Fregley. And then I also really enjoyed reading The Giver. That should be coming up on the channel this weekend as well. My favorite character in The Giver is probably The Giver, for a variety of reasons. It's kind of a cop-out answer, but yeah, those 3 are probably my favorite books that I've read for this channel. Favorite series as a whole, honestly, I've really enjoyed reading the Spiderwick Chronicles. There are a couple of dull moments, but compared to, I really I didn't enjoy reading Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. It's very long, it's very tedious. Dune is also another one. I really enjoy Dune as a book. It has not been a very fun narrating experience for me. It's one of those where I see it sitting on the top of my pile every night when I come to record, and I look at it and it's like, oh, I gotta get through 12 pages of Dune. And it's not because I don't love the story, it's not a very fun reading experience for me, if that makes any sense. There's a difference between the narrating side of things and the reading side of things. Question says, also, can you read Wolf Called Wander? It's kind of sad and talks about a wolf life. I'll add it to my list. I'm not familiar with it. Question from Lucas Johnson, who says, have the Witcher books made it onto your list yet? Yes, they have. I'm for sure going to do the first 2. I don't know when I'll get to them, but I do have a lot of Polish listeners. So to all of my listeners in Poland who are currently on the stream, dzień dobry and dziękuję for being members of my I have a cheat sheet, and I probably butcher the pronunciation, but I have a cheat sheet on some languages, and we do have a lot of listeners in Poland, so thank you to all of you guys over in Poland. I'm sorry that I insulted your country in my book. But yes, I will be doing The Witcher. For those of you confused why I keep talking about Poland with The Witcher, The Witcher is written by a Polish author. Its original language is Polish. So I'll do my best with the pronunciations. I will probably butcher them. I've only seen the first season of the show. I've never played the games, so wish me luck and forgive me. I do apologize. But yes, it is on my list. Austin Texans says, how do you manage so many accents? Good job. Yikes. Good question. How do I manage so many accents? Practice is the big one. I mean, obviously, you can tell from my early Harry Potter recordings to my Deathly Hallows recording that my confidence with the British accent changed significantly. My fluidity with it changed significantly. My ability to do other voices with it changed significantly. I think it's just a lot of practice and being comfortable in the voices themselves. The one that was really experimental for me that you guys on the channel won't be aware of, but those of you on Patreon will be, I'm reading Artemis Fowl with an Irish accent. And so narrating not just a character with an Irish accent, but the entire book in an Irish accent from the beginning, going Artemis Fowl by Owen Colfer, is a significant challenge for me. And so I figured I'd try it. I put a poll on the channel asking which accent I should read it in, because the author's Irish, the characters are Irish. My comfort level would tell me to read it in an English accent, but then maybe American fans want me to read it in an American accent. But because of the typically I go with what the characters, where they're from, and or the author, that sort of thing. But in terms of how do I develop my accents, it's I consume a lot of foreign media. I consume a lot of English media. Obviously, with a kid, I watch a lot of Bluey, so I have the Australian accent down. But it's a lot of practice through doing what I do. So, yeah, you can definitely tell the difference. Fizabas says, the accents are so good. Thank you very much. Isaac Hayes says, what did you think of NXT Battleground? I had a blast with it. I'm having so much fun as a wrestling fan these days. You have no idea. Ani Uchek says, hi. Well, using my cheat sheet. Dzień dobry and dziękuję to Ani Uchek. Thank you guys very much. I love learning where people are from. That's kind of one of my favorite things about this channel is seeing how worldwide this audience base is. So I obviously a ton of American listeners, a bunch of Canadian listeners, British listeners, but then all of you guys from other countries, whether it be over in Europe or elsewhere. I love hearing where you guys are from and hearing how this has helped you with your language learning or just your enjoyment of American or British material. Samanur says, hey Ty, welcome back. Nice to see you guys. Joseph Morrow says, you should read Tower of Three. It's a pretty good series written by a small book author and has an interesting power system. I'll have to check it out. That's the first time I've heard of that one. Feel free to keep asking questions in the chat. I'm coming to about the last couple pages or so of my pre-prepared questions, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. Julian Yena says, have you read the... I can't tell if it's an L or an I, so I'm going to say Lacani's trilogy. No. I'm unfamiliar with that series. I'll have to check it out. Let's go to a question from Hagen Days. I like the name. Who says, will you be doing any of the Dune sequels? Good question. Honestly, so I just mentioned the thing about how as a narrator, I haven't entirely been enjoying reading Dune. I love Dune. I love the Dune world. I love reading the book. I don't love narrating the book because of the way that... if you guys are listening to me read the book, or you guys have read the book, you'll be familiar with how the different perspectives are written in the book. Each paragraph jumps from a different character's perspective. It's very confusing as a narrator. At the moment, no. I'd be open to do Doom Messiah, for sure. And I think it all depends on... This is going to sound scummy, but if I can capitalize on... If they make a third film. So if they make a film based on... Dune Messiah or one on Children of Dune, then I think that's when I will look at this series again and go, can I do this? Is it going to help the channel? Is it going to help you guys and your engagement with the film? In that case, then yes, I might consider it. But at the moment, I'm going to take a break from Dune. Just it is a bit of an exhausting read as a narrator. Samanur says, what is your favorite book series that you have narrated yet? Series as a whole, I think I just mentioned this, was probably the Spiderwick Chronicles. But individual book-wise, I had a blast reading Goblet of Fire. I had a blast reading The Giver. I had a blast reading the original Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Percy Jackson-wise, I really enjoyed reading Battle of the Labyrinth. So there's a bunch of them in there that I've really enjoyed. But as a whole, series-wise, I think Spiderwick Chronicles is probably the best average-wise. Will Gordonstone says, hi there, loving the radiation effect so far. Thank you. I know you've mentioned before that you've taken elements from some of your favorite stories like The Giver. Was there anything from Percy Jackson that influenced your writing and world building? I think absolutely. The more that I read Percy Jackson, and specifically the Heroes of Olympus, because Heroes of Olympus would have come out around the time that I started just kind of formulating ideas for it. I've been writing this book for 10 years, and I'm finally at a point where it's a story. It's not just characters on a page. But I can definitely see it. So Leo is from Houston, right? The main character in The Radiation Effect is from Houston. And I think that's an obvious parallel there. She speaks Spanish. Leo also speaks Spanish. I'm trying to think of other ones. Hazel's kind of got that Haitian voodoo aspect to her character, and I picked that up with Jordan. His parents are from Haiti. His adopted parents are from Haiti, I should say. In terms of power sets, not specifically that I can think of, but yeah, I think Emma and Margot both are very, very much based on different aspects of Annabeth, and so I think that has definitely influenced where these characters have come from for me as an author from reading Percy Jackson in a time that was very influential for my reading and writing growing up. Someone who says, we'll have to give that a read or listen. Well, thank you very much. Question from Donovan Carter, who says, would you ever consider leading a class or doing a live stream on writing? Good question. I'm currently... A buddy of mine who is working his way through a story right now have been talking about doing a, just in our local town, talking about just kind of a writer's group. And so from that, I think there are elements of that I would love to get out to you guys. If you guys are writers, if you guys want to become writers, I could send you to several other channels that are very good at this sort of thing. But if it's something that you want me to do and I had time to do so, I think I would be very happy to do so. I think there's a lot of parts of my writing that are really strong, but also parts of my writing that I need to improve on. And maybe part of that back and forth with you guys is learning how to improve on the things that I'm not necessarily the best at. But yeah, I would love to do so if there's enough of you guys that would be interested in doing something like that. Let's go to a question from Anna Freed, who says, what flag do you have in front of your house today? Good question. Those of you who are new here, you could probably see the flags behind me. I have 6 flags behind me, if you can count the big Minnesota one. I'm a flag collector. That's part of why I love learning where people are from. I'm a big geography nerd. But one thing that I do is I put a new flag in front of my house for every national day. So today there are 2 national days. One is Russia, one is the Philippines. And so I put out a Philippine flag in front of my house today to celebrate Philippine National Day, which actually tomorrow, my bad. The 12th of June is Philippine National Day. So yes, the Philippines is what is hanging in front of my house at the moment. Question from Chris, who says, when will we be seeing Chalice of the Gods on the channel? On the channel, I think early September. So honestly, it depends when we I have to do the math, and I have to figure out when we finish Blood of Olympus. So as soon as we're done with Mark of Athena, then we'll do House of Hades. As soon as we're done with House of Hades, we'll do Blood of Olympus. And as soon as we're done with Blood of Olympus, then Chalice of the Gods will be coming your way. All of this will be on the channel in time for Wrath of the Triple Goddess, which comes out September 24th. So the absolute latest that Chalice is coming on the channel is September 23rd. It won't take that long. I'm thinking it'll be the end of August or early September for the channel, and probably a few weeks earlier over on Patreon. Samanur says, I was unaware you were an author. My older sister and I are working on a book as well. And definitely have a lot of parallels between the exact same characters you mentioned. Yeah, I think Percy Jackson has been very influential for writers our age. I don't know our age difference, but for those who grew up reading Harry Potter or who grew up reading Percy Jackson, they have absolutely had an influence on the characters that we write. Yes, I have a book that I am actively working on that you can find on the channel. The first 10 chapters are available. It's called The Radiation Effect. You can find it in the playlist that says Radiation Effect. It's got a big red AI-generated background that eventually I'd like to hire an artist to do actual cover art for. Question from Proud Femboy, who says, are you planning on doing The Sun and the Star anytime soon? I'm working my way through it. It's a very long book. It is, I think, just eyeballing it, it's either about the same length as House of Hades, or it is longer than House of Hades, which would make it the longest of the Percy Jackson related books. It's a very long book, and it is going to take me time to get through. But like I mentioned earlier, it references a very significant spoiler in Trials of Apollo, and so I think I'm gonna wait to release it. I'll probably finish it before I'm done finishing Trials of Apollo, and I'll probably do exactly what I did with Chalice of the Gods, where I'll release it in secret to my patrons, but I probably won't have it on the channel until after Trials of Apollo. Yeah. Question from Joseph Morrill. Finally listened to your album Neptune. It was super good. Follows it up with a question, or was it Poseidon? Yes, it is called Poseidon. Will you be making more music in the future? My intention is yes. At the moment, my band and I are planning on recording our third album next summer. At the moment, we're a little worried about our times, if that makes any sense. I don't want to cut back from the channel, and I also don't want to cut back from my work, my main job. And so we're trying to figure out how it's going to work recording next summer. But yes, if you guys want to listen to my first two albums, one of them, the one that we mentioned, Poseidon, is available. This painting over my shoulder is the cover art. There's a link down below. If you have Spotify, you can click that and head over to listen to that there. But let me know what you guys think. Thank you very much, Joseph, for taking a listen. Juck12 says, your channel's really underrated. Well, thank you very much. We're currently at about 4,100 subscribers. If you know people who would be interested in my content, feel free to share it with them. I'd be very happy to have more people on the channel as well. But thank you very much. Samanur says, would definitely agree. It was generation defining. I was really hopeful you were talking about my album for a second, but no, yes. It absolutely was. I think an entire generation of kids grew up with knowledge of mythology because of Percy Jackson. That's kind of the key to making a successful or a long-lasting franchise, is picking up on a media or an interest that isn't already capitalized on. It's kind of like a business thing, right? Like you capitalize on something that's not there. That's how you become successful. Amazon got really big because nobody was selling books online. Walmart wanted to spread out with the general store. It's basic capitalism. You just capitalize on something that people aren't using. So yes, that was the case with high sorcerer fantasy with Harry Potter, and that was the case with mythology with Percy Jackson. Let's go to a question from Wyatt Neal, who says, where do you get inspiration for the voices on the channel? Good question. So I mentioned this earlier. When it comes to like the direct narrating of a book, so just like my base narration, I will typically do either where the characters are from or where the author is from. And so, for example, with Artemis Fowl, both the characters and the author are Irish. And so I decided to do an Irish accent. Percy Jackson, the characters are American. That being said, I don't do a very good East Coast accent. And so I didn't want to over-regionalize my accent with Percy Jackson. And so especially the main characters, are all in my natural speaking voice, just at different timbres. Rick Riordan is also, I believe, from the East Coast. I could be wrong about that. Harry Potter, all the characters are British. But when it comes to Harry Potter, especially with a regionalized accent, I typically followed what their film voices sounded like. So for Dumbledore specifically, I went with the first Dumbledore voice, the Richard Harris voice from the first two films. Hagrid, I went with the West Country accent. The exceptions to that, I didn't give Western accents for any of the main characters. I did an RP accent for all the main characters because that's how they are in the films for the most part. Even though in the books, Harry, Ron, and Malfoy are all also from the West Country, so they should roll their R's similar to how Hagrid did. Although Harry did grow up in Surrey. So that being said, maybe he should have the RP accent. So yeah, it kind of all depends on comfort level and where the author's from, where the characters are from. Most fantasy I will read in a British accent because that's kind of the stereotypical fantasy accent. So like George R.R. Martin is American, but I'm going to read the Game of Thrones books in a British accent. The only exception to that is I will probably read Fablehaven in an American accent, and I'm not entirely sure why, but I think it has to do with the people who are asking me to read the book. They're all American. Most of them are from Utah. And so out of respect to them and to the author, I'll probably read those in an American accent. But yeah. Juck12 says, what's your OG voice for Blackjack? Oh boy, what was Blackjack's impression based off of? So I'm a huge wrestling fan, right? So in Percy Jackson, a lot of my character accents are based on wrestlers. So Ares is based on Vince McMahon, which has its ups and downs. I won't elaborate on that. That is for you guys to decide. But Blackjack, I think, was based on Taz. So Taz is a commentator currently for All Elite Wrestling. He's very stereotypical New York accent. And when he's angry, he really growls his voice. So I really wanted to give kind of that angry, stereotypical cabbie voice from New York. So for Blackjack, I kind of, I added the East Coast New York accent to it. But I think that's where that one's based from. Dionysus is based on Rick from Rick and Morty. I do know that. Tasha Cleary says, are you planning on continuing with Artemis Fowl anytime soon? Yes. The reason there's such a gap between chapters 5 and 6, and I do apologize, I did try to promise you guys weekly chapters, and it's been over a month now. The reason for that being the last 4 chapters of Artemis Fowl are all over 40 pages long. And it was hard for me to find time to sit down and specifically do 40 pages of a single chapter for Artemis Fowl. And so I do apologize for that. My goal is to have Artemis Fowl done and complete to you guys by the start of August. And so I just recorded chapter 6 last night. I'm hoping to have that chapter to you guys over on Patreon sometime either this week or next. And then the final 3 chapters come out in the weeks to follow, and then have it all compiled together for you guys, hopefully even on the channel by August. I think that would be really enjoyable. I don't know if people request the next couple Artemis Fowl books, I'd be happy to do so, but I really just wanted to do the first one for sure, just to see if I could, especially with that Irish accent. Quality Subtlety says, are you planning on releasing Game of Thrones on the channel? Probably not, for the same reason that we won't release Harry Potter on the channel or Lord of the Rings. I think Game of Thrones, specifically because of House of the Dragon, is probably going to be a copyright nightmare for me. And so I think all of the full-form versions of Game of Thrones, or even Fire and Blood, I'm going to put over on Patreon for free. It'll always be available for free for you guys, but I don't think I'll put it on YouTube. Juck12 says, who's your favorite character in Percy Jackson? Nico D'Angelo, I think, fairly clearly from everybody else. Leo is a favorite of mine. I love reading for Frank, but I think my favorite character by far is Nico. Zeus Atreides says, how do you decide which accent you'll use as your base narration for a book? Yeah, pretty much just either where the author or where the characters are from is kind of the root of that. I think I've covered that a few times in this live stream, so if you want to go back like an hour or so and just work your way through, I think I've answered that a few times. If you guys have questions that you want answered in the chat, feel free to do so. I have a few more from my pre-prepared questions, and then I'd be happy to answer any that you guys still want answered in the chat. And I'll probably go till about, let's see, East time, 4:30, 4:45-ish. So another half hour or so. Hartford Naylor says, how often do you release Magic Treehouse recordings? My kids adore them and will always be looking for more. Good question. Those ones, so my children's books specifically, my children recordings, are just kind of when I can get to them. I always do them in a single sitting, and so it's when I can find time to do them in a single sitting. It's usually about 45 minutes to an hour. These including Magic Treehouse, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and A to Z Mysteries is the other series that I've started now. My goal is to have one a week. That's not always feasible. So I think we're through about halfway of the. There's like 50 to 60 Magic Treehouse books, and I think we're over halfway through the series at the moment. So I'll try to do Magic Treehouse every 2 to 3 weeks, if that's fair. Joseph Morrill says, favorite candy? Good question. I'm not a big candy fan, which is weird, I know. If I had to pick a candy that I enjoy, probably Smarties. Question from Christy Taravenski, who says, nice Canucks shirt. Thank you. Who wins the Stanley Cup this year? I think it's clearly going to Florida, which is fine by me. My backstory to how I became a Vancouver Canucks fan is I picked a team at random when I was 7, and I landed on Florida. So I was a Florida Panthers fan for like 3 years, and they were terrible. They were abysmal. And they traded their goalie, and I really liked their goalie. And his name was Roberto Luongo, and he was traded to Vancouver, and I followed him to Vancouver and became a Canucks fan. He eventually was traded back to Florida, but I stayed a Vancouver fan, and so heartbreak follows me everywhere I go. Juck22, which book did you like to read? If you're asking my favorite book that I've ever recorded on the channel, I've answered it a few times in this live stream. Probably, either The Giver or Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, or the first Diary of a Wimpy Kid book. It was probably the most fun I ever had recording. Joseph Morrill says, favorite item on the Starbucks menu? Chat doesn't know the answer. Yes, very clearly from the two that are sitting next to me at the moment. The strawberry acai refresher. Goated drink, honestly. Condensates like crazy as I spill on my shoulder. Jack12 says, which book didn't you like to read on the channel? Good question. The least fun I've ever had as a narrator? Like I said, Dune is tough. Dune is a tough book to get through. Probably Order of the Phoenix was not an enjoyable experience for me. I don't like that book. I've made my opinions on Order of the Phoenix clear. I like the ending of it. I really do like the ending of it, but the rest of it I don't care for. Trying to think of all the books behind me. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'll probably stick with Order of the Phoenix. Samanur says, unfortunately got to leave now. Must continue listening to your Heroes of Olympus audiobooks. Well, thank you very much. I would like you to know that you are one of the reasons I decided to start working towards voice acting. Well, thank you. That's the first time I've ever heard something like that. I'm very, very happy to hear that. And I'm excited to see where your career in that goes. Let me know if there's advice you want, or if there's things that you are good at that I can improve on. I'm always happy to hear constructive criticism. So very happy to hear that. Thank you very much. Joseph Morrill says, least favorite character to have to have read. Good question. Purely for a stress on my voice level, it's any interaction. Dumbledore's hard. Like, the voice that I chose for Dumbledore is not sustainable. Because when you're talking like this for the entire book, it grates on your throat. And especially when you match that with the voice that I chose for Voldemort. And those two characters interact at the end of Order of the Phoenix. And it's a fantastic interaction. It's a fantastic scene. Order of the Phoenix, it's one of the best scenes in the entire series. But the ending of Order of the Phoenix, as much as I enjoyed reading it, was physically exhausting. And so from a purely physical standpoint, I think Dumbledore, Voldemort, and Hagrid are all very hard voices for me. In terms of accents, I do terrible Scottish accents, so every time I have to read from McGonagall, I hate it. But that is a really, really good question. Feel free to keep asking if you want. A few more questions here from my pre-prepared, so if you guys want to just bombard the chat with stuff that I'd be happy to answer. Fiona Haverstad says, are you going to do any live readings while you're over in England? I'd love to see you do your work in person. That is a great question. The answer is no, currently. I would love to do it in the future. The only reason that I don't have plans to do it now, twofold. It's a family vacation. I'm going with my wife. We're going in August. And I also need to apply for a work visa if I do that. Anywhere you go, especially in England, it's a little easier in America to do something like that if you're from another country. But England specifically has very heavy busking laws, or just anywhere that you work where you have the potential to make money or gather an audience, you do have to have a license for it. And so that would be very expensive for me to try to get, especially this late into the game, too much out from that. I would love to do it in the future, though, especially if I were to publish a book and I would want to go over there and maybe read chapters of it or do some signings. I love the United Kingdom, but at the moment I don't have that in my back pocket. Great question, though. I'd love to do that. Let's see here. Samanur says, actually, I have one suggestion. The Girl Who Drank the Moon. I'm unfamiliar with that book, but I will check it out. Juck12 says, what voice didn't you like to do for Percy Jackson? Good question. I don't know. They're all American accents for the most part. What voice didn't I like to do? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't have a specific answer. Probably Dionysus, off the top of my... Dionysus or Ares, maybe. Just because it's the same. It's kind of that graveliness that kind of weighs on my voice. Let's see here. Artie Powerhouse says, what is your favorite book and book character that you have not recorded yet? Favorite book that I haven't recorded yet is Storm of Swords, which is the third in the Game of Thrones A Song of Ice and Fire series. Obviously, we have to get through Game of Thrones first, and then we have to get through Clash of Kings, and then we'll do Storm of Swords. My favorite character that I haven't done yet. Favorite literary character that I haven't recorded yet. I'm looking behind me. Give me a sec here. Really good question. I don't know if I have an honest answer for you. I haven't read Stannis Baratheon yet because he doesn't appear until Clash of Kings. This is back on Game of Thrones topic. If we're sticking with Game of Thrones, because I do intend to read those eventually, my favorite characters from that I'm trying to think would be fun to read for. Yeah, it's probably going to stick with Stannis Baratheon off the top of my head. Just that good question, very tough question for me to answer off the top of my head though. Joseph Morrill says, when do we get to that specific Trials of Apollo book where that thing happens? When we get to that specific Trials of Apollo book where that thing happens, I think everyone will need like a week to mentally prepare for the last two books in that series. Well, maybe that'll save me a gap, right? So if I stop posting for like 2 weeks, and then I can build up a back catalog, that would be great. I would very much appreciate that. But yeah, it's heavy. It happens. Question from Rizan Al Gaib. Nice name. Can I get a signed copy of The Radiation Effect when it comes out in hardcover? Yes, I'd be happy to do so. I have no idea when that's going to be, but I'd be very happy to do that. I'm very happy to send signed copies of whatever you guys want me to. I feel a little... Like I said, it's odd signing someone else's work, if that makes any sense. Juck12 says, what is your nickname? Echo Wirm, probably. Like, my name's not a secret. I say it at the beginning of every book. It's just everybody refers to me as Echo, so I'm just like, oh, okay, sure. M. Alfaro says, I just became a Patreon. I really enjoy your material. Thanks. Well, thank you very much. Thank you so much for the support above and beyond what you really have to, and thank you. That means a lot to me. My final pre-prepared question comes from Dana Cirkovich, who says, what does the future of the channel look like? Good question. So right now, this is from the perspective of non-members or non-patrons. We are currently on Mark of Athena. Mark of Athena shouldn't finish up this weekend. You should get the full version of that by Saturday. And then The Giver comes out in a full form on Saturday as well, I believe. And then we will start on 2 new books, one of them being House of Hades, which is right after Mark of Athena. And also at the same time, we will be doing Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which is the 5th book in the Chronicles of Narnia series, excuse me. I believe there's 16 or 17 chapters in Voyage of the Dawn Treader. So as soon as that's done and comes out in a full form video, we'll still have about half of House of Hades left, and then we'll do 2 chapters a day of House of Hades. After that, then we will start on 2 separate books again. One will be Dune, which is currently available over on Patreon, and we will also start Blood of Olympus. So we'll do Blood of Olympus and Dune. Once those are done, then we will post Chalice of the Gods, which is Percy Jackson 6, and that will be in time for Percy Jackson 7 to come out on September 24th. And then we'll do Kane Chronicles, and after Dune, then we'll do Silver Chair, which is the 6th book in Chronicles of Narnia, and then we'll kind of shuffle back and forth between Chronicles of Narnia and Hunger Games. So we'll do Silver Chair, Hunger Games, Last Battle, Catching Fire, and then we'll replace that extra spot with a book called Fablehaven. And then after we're done with the first Fablehaven book, then we'll do Mockingjay, which will be in time, plenty of time for the new Hunger Games book to come out next spring. After that, that's when I'm not quite sure which direction we'll go. For Rick Riordan content, for sure, we're going to go through Kane Chronicles, and then we'll do Trials of Apollo, Sun and the Star, Magnus Chase after that as well. But in terms of a second series, I'm not quite sure yet. Maybe Aragon, but we'll see. I'll probably do a poll once we get there. That'll be all the way down this fall, even approaching Christmas. By the time we get to that point, we're several months down the road, so don't worry about that right now. Artie Powerhouse says, which series was your favorite to record, and which one will you be recording next? I think I just answered the next question. Series-wise, my favorite series that I've read, as a whole, in terms of like enjoyable experience as a whole for the series, is probably the Spiderwick Chronicles. I really did enjoy reading Percy Jackson. I really enjoyed reading Harry Potter, but there are some lulls in there. I don't like the second books in either series. I didn't really enjoy reading Order of the Phoenix very much. But favorite book series, probably Harry Potter as a whole. But then individual, I really enjoyed Spiderwick Chronicles. There's not really a dull moment in the Spiderwick Chronicles for me as a narrator. Plus, they're short enough where I don't really get bored as I'm reading. So, any other questions you guys want answered in the chat? Otherwise, I think we'll wrap this up in the next 5 minutes or so. So get out any last questions you have. I'm going to check the channel or the Discord to see if anyone's asked anything. Try to keep you guys not on dead air there for a second. Leah Nunez says, you're the best YouTuber I have ever seen. Well, thank you very much. I completely disagree with that, but maybe of the ones you've seen, I am the best. So thank you. But there are plenty of others that are far better at it than me. Huge thank you to ML Faro, who really went above and beyond in joining the Patreon. Joseph Morrill says, what's your thought process on why the Harry Potter movies are always marketed during the winter? I have my own theories on as to why, but I was curious about your thoughts. Good question. Especially the first 2 Harry Potter films have always kind of been described as Christmas movies or around the fire movies, if that makes any sense. There's a coziness to them. Whereas when you get to like the 3rd and 4th films, they kind of have more of a fall vibe, a Halloween vibe almost. And I think the biggest reason for that is there's a couple different reasons. Christmas or the holidays specifically is a very much a family time. Harry Potter's films, especially the first few films, are very family oriented. They're a little mature for children, but they're also a little immature for adults. And so it's kind of the perfect movie to bring the family together. And the best time to do that from a marketing perspective is around Christmas or even around Easter if you were to do that. However, I'm trying to think here. First book has major events happen on Christmas. Second book, off the top of my head, I can't remember if there's anything major that happens around Christmas. But most of the books have a major event that happens around the Christmas holiday. And I think because of the way that the stories are written, where the rising action, kind of the midway point or even the end of the second act always takes place around that Christmas break. They're always framed around Christmas because of that. Like Goblet of Fire is the big one. Like the Yule Ball is kind of the big midway point of the book. And that takes place around Christmas. And so I think the way that the stories are oriented, Christmas is always a very impactful thing, tonally, in the story. And so marketing them as Christmas movies fits that a little better. Feel free to have your opinions. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Clee says, did you watch the Percy Jackson show? And if you did, what were your thoughts on it? I enjoyed it for what it was. I liked it. I am very worried about the future of the show for a variety of reasons. I think they changed. First of all, let me say, I enjoyed it as a substitution in a visual medium in comparison to the films. I liked it a lot better than the films, and I think that's a pretty easy consensus that most people are having. I thought the character motivations were changed in ways that I didn't enjoy that much. I thought Annabeth's character motivations were significantly different than they are in the book, and I don't love that because I'm so in love with Annabeth, the book character, that seeing the way that she was written, not portrayed, I love the portrayal, but I didn't like the way she was written in the show. I thought the pacing was weird, especially, I mean, the big one everybody hates is the whole Lotus Casino episode. That's kind of the consensus, is that the pacing was very, very weird to have an entire episode take place there. I didn't like the way that they changed the story of it. And I'm very worried going forward with the changes that they've made, how it affects the rest of the series. That being said, it was very cool to see a new visual take, because I grew up with the films. And so seeing them now in a different way is very entertaining to me and very interesting to see the two different perspectives. And one that didn't quite have Rick Riordan's blessing and has since been rescinded of his blessing, and one that he was a part of actively. And so seeing Rick Riordan actively work on this TV show was very cool for me as a book fan, especially with the film. Gray says, what voice did you like to do of Percy Jackson? Good question. My favorite voice that I've done in Percy Jackson? The son of Boreas in Lost Hero. I'm trying to... Well, or Frank. Frank's the easy one, because I'm doing it all the time. Frank's a fun voice to do with a Canadian accent. And I'm trying to remember this. So Boreas is a character in The Lost Hero, and he has a son that I used a super heavy French accent for. And I had a blast doing that. Let's see here. RD Powerhouse says, will you be recording or reading... Sorry, I gotta move my... Shatterpoint and or Crystal Star. I can. They will be new to my list, though. You're the first person to request those, so I'll add them to my list. One more time, I want to check the Discord. If you guys have any last-second questions you want answered, happy to do so. I know there's a little delay between me asking that and when they actually show up in the chat, and I'll try not to leave you guys with dead air here. Nope. So, that being said, feel free to keep asking questions. If there are any last-second ones, I will touch on them. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about just anything going on with the channel. So we already talked about kind of the future of the channel. August, we'll reapply for monetization. So hopefully we get that. It will be fantastic to have even more income coming from the channel than we already do through Patreon. But money has never been the reason that I do this. I do this because I love reading. It gives me an incentive to read. And I just really enjoy the way that you guys interact with me as a creator. I love doing these live streams for you guys. I love talking with you guys over on Discord. I love talking with you guys in the comments section. I love talking with you guys over on Patreon. The community that we built here, I'm very proud of and very happy to be a part of, and let alone be the for lack of a better term, epicenter of it, or the face of it in conjunction with these works. Very happy to hear things that, like was mentioned earlier, someone wants to be a voice actor because of they were inspired by what I do. Well, thank you very much. Like, that to me is worth a million times more than any money I could ever make on this channel. It's wonderful hearing the feedback that you guys give me. I really, really do appreciate it, and genuinely from the bottom of my heart, thank you for what you guys mean to me through the words that you tell me. It means a lot. So I mentioned my second channel. If you guys are interested in that, I will be putting up a new version of my Doctor Who timeline video as soon as Series 14 or Season 1, if you guys want to refer to it as such. I will do all of New Who in that timeline video, as well as about half of the Classic series. So I've been working my way through the Classic series. It'll be like a 3-hour video if you guys want to look for that. My second channel is called Sheet G, SHEET space G. You guys can check that out. There's plenty of other content there. I do rankings and reviews of content like this that you would see on the channel. I do sports content over there as well. Just talking about, yeah, pretty much everything I want to talk about personally. That is not just me reading a book, which is what you see here. So if you guys are interested in that, go check that out. If it's something you like, feel free to go subscribe. Trying to think what else I wanted to talk about. I talked a little bit about my Patreons. Just one more shout out to the people that are on the screen there. And then I talked about merch. If you guys want to check out or purchase an I Ate the Kitchen Table t-shirt or sweatshirt or long sleeve tee, feel free to check that out with the link below that says merch. There is also a link to my band's music. I would be happy if you guys gave that a listen, if that's something you're interested in. And if you guys are interested in the Discord, if you want to continue this conversation over after this live stream is done, feel free to click the link to the Discord and go join there. Question from Gray, who says, do you like your job? I really enjoy my job. I do. I love what I do. I'm very happy with life for the most part. Joseph Morrow says, rank the Percy Jackson books before you leave. Okay, I'm not going to rank the Heroes of Olympus books with them, but I will rank the 6 Percy Jackson books off the top of my head. My favorite has and always has been Battle of the Labyrinth. So I'd say Battle of the Labyrinth is top, right below that Last Olympian. Then, oh boy, Sea of Monsters for sure on the bottom. Now here's my hot take. I think second to last is going to be Lightning Thief. I think for me it's going to go 4, 5, 3, 6, 1, 2. And I really have to give that more thought if I want that to be my definitive ranking. But I think from a personal enjoyment perspective and a quality of writing perspective, I think Battle of the Labyrinth is my favorite. Then Last Olympian, and then very close between. No, I think Titan's Curse edges it out. Titan's Curse, and then Chalice of the Gods, and then Lightning Thief, and then Sea of Monsters is probably how I'd rank them. Let me know what you guys think, because I'm sure I will probably change those around as time goes on. So that being said, if you guys want advanced content, feel free to check out the Patreon. Like I said, as little as $3 a month, if you guys are able to do that, that would be, I'd very much appreciate that. But that's never anything that I want you guys to feel forced into doing, and it's never something that I will never keep content away from you guys. I will always give you guys the content that is over there behind a paywall, eventually over for free. Hazelnut says, I feel like the second book in every fantasy middle grade young adult book series is just something everyone forgets about or just doesn't care about. I completely agree. I think, especially when you compare Percy Jackson and Harry Potter, it's the exact same case. People are very nostalgic for Chamber of Secrets, but from a quality perspective, Chamber of Secrets is probably the weakest of the Harry Potter books. Same case, in my opinion, for Sea of Monsters. So, that being said, I'm going to call it to a close there. Thank you guys very much for a wonderful live stream. I'll see you guys in 2